Welcome, everyone. Again, thank you so much for being with us. I'm doing a poor substitution for Thomas Diaz, who, as we gather, is in the air flying over to New York City for meetings. But really, it's my privilege and pleasure to be with you and to welcome the people of L.A., CADA, Los Angeles Centers for Alcohol and Drug Abuse. It's an organization committed to helping individuals navigate the challenges of addiction and behavioral health with a mission to save lives, to unite families, and to protect our community. L.A. CADA provides specialized addiction counseling and health education to those in need, and we are delighted, we are fortunate to have Bill Tarkanian and members of the L.A. CADA team with us as they share their vital work and explore the ways their mission aligns with the values of All Saints. And so Bill's going to present for a little bit, and then there'll be time for questions and answers. And with that, I give you Bill Tarkanian. Bill, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Good morning, and I want to thank my mother for being here. Thank you, and several of my friends from the Los Angeles Centers for Alcohol and Drug Abuse. My name is Bill Tarkanian, and I am currently the Chief Strategy Officer with the Los Angeles Centers for Alcohol and Drug Abuse, sometimes known as LA CADA, LACADA, LACADA. It doesn't matter as long as we can be of service to those who are seeking critical healthy living services and behavioral health services. I should preface my comments by saying that I've been a member of All Saints Church, I think, for about 34 years, you know, I find myself in and out of the church, always a very special place in my heart, but, you know, more engaged, you know, in times of turmoil, you know, deaths and sickness and presidential elections. So I'm re-engaged right now with some of the things that are happening now. But truthfully, my first partner, who passed of AIDS, received about 1.5 years of in-house hospice care through the All Saints AIDS Service Center, which ostensibly was started by the good folks here at All Saints, and then eventually spun off into its own thing, and they served the San Gabriel Valley and local community here for many, many years. And from that moment, I was introduced to grace. And that's kind of a central theme of what I'm going to talk about today, and kind of the LA CADA experience. So I will also say that I say this is part of my spiel. So I'm also a person in long-term recovery, and I'm very comfortable talking about my own personal experiences. And so, you know, I'm a disbarred, disgraced lawyer who found redemption working in behavioral health. And I'm a much better behavioral health administrator than I ever was as a lawyer. And I actually now have, with the benefit of time and hindsight, an appreciation that everything I have experienced, you know, set me up uniquely well to be good at what I do now, and to help the mission of LA CADA and what we do. Apologies to Mom, who had to endure decades of my behavioral problems in my active addiction. But you know, I am grateful for everything I experienced, and how it allowed me to be of service today. And I'm not ashamed of it, and I don't run from it. I embrace it. I understand it to be an important part of why I continue to work for LA CADA and to provide services to so many people, including really marginalized populations. So I want to tell you a little bit about the agency. I think we're 53 years old. We were founded in 1971 by a local physician and his wife out of the Whittier area in response to the heroin epidemic of returning soldiers from Vietnam, I think in 1971. And initially it was an outpatient clinic, and then they started a residential program named after themselves, the Allen House. And the Allen House was really kind of the flagship program for LA CADA for about 3 decades. The outpatient program and the Allen House were located in Santa Fe Springs, and they ostensibly served the Whittier, Norwalk, Santa Fe Springs area. When I joined the agency, which would be 16 years ago in December, they had maybe 5 or 7 years before launched a small operation on Skid Row, and I happened to go to work as a intern with LA CADA on Skid Row, and I remember thinking, I'm going to go help heal the homeless. I was not quite 2 years into recovery at the time, and what really happened was the homeless helped heal me. When I thought I knew everything, they reminded me I didn't know critical things about living and thriving in a difficult world. When I was lacking in gratitude, they reminded me of how grateful I should be for what I hadn't lost. And when I was fearful, they reminded me what real courage looked like. And so, my God, she put me exactly where I needed to be very early in my own recovery journey, and that was on Los Angeles' Skid Row, working with homeless men and women and families. And quite honestly, even though I've had a half dozen different titles with the agency, and I've stayed with the agency continuously for those 16 years, the best job I ever had was as a drug and alcohol counselor on Skid Row, working with those men and women. But today, LA CADA is a much different agency. In the last 10 years, we went from about 100 employees to well over 600 employees. We went from 2 brick and mortar sites to probably 25 brick and mortar sites. We're not just funded through the Department of Public Health, but we have contracts with the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, which I'll get to, because restorative justice is a huge part of my commitment to LA CADA and to the recovery world. We have contracts with the Department of Mental Health, Department of Health Services, multiple state and federal grants that support this very large organization that has a very large geographical footprint here in Los Angeles County. Specifically to the Pasadena-Altadena area, we have a program that's very near and dear to my heart, which ostensibly is the agency's LGBTQ services. We have transitional supportive housing for about 55 persons from the LGBTQ community, and then we also recently just launched the first Medicaid or Medi-Cal funded residential program for gender identity and expression diverse or non-binary fluid participants, ostensibly transgender non-binary participants, and to our knowledge, it's the only Medicaid funded program specifically working with that population, and it's really needed. And that's part of LA CADA's success, is working with specialized populations. We have, at the present time, I believe about 225 to 250 residential beds from 5 different facilities. I guess Serenity House here in Altadena would be the sixth. There are 5 outpatient sites with treating about 750 participants on any given day. We have a 16-bed crisis residential program for severely mentally ill who are ostensibly discharged to the streets after being 5150'd. And so what we do is we take them in and care coordinate them into safer settings. And here also in the San Gabriel Valley, the agency has contracts with or for the benefit of about 25 different cities here in the San Gabriel Valley. Actually, almost every city in the San Gabriel Valley except Pasadena. Of course, this is the home territory for Union Station, which is another All Saints spinoff. And but virtually every other city in the San Gabriel Valley, we've got 2, 3, 4-person teams doing outreach with the unhoused. And it's become a very large part of the agency's services. We have a vibrant youth program that's in 4 or 5 different school districts, including the El Rancho Unified School District, Paramount, Lakewood, and I think Linwood. We've got some big projects coming up, another residential program in about a year and a half that will be in Linwood, 100 beds. We're inside Los Angeles County Jail at Men's Central Jail, where we work with the K6G population, or the essentially gay and bisexual men and trans women who are segregated for their own safety inside Men's Central Jail. We also work at Wayside with general population, and at Twin Towers with the severely co-occurring. So, you know, we're doing a lot, and this growth over the last 10 years has really been, you know, the honor of my lifetime to be part of. I actually, before I was Chief Strategy Officer, my title was Director of Program Development, and it was my job to launch all these new programs within budget. And, you know, more or less we did, and we've had phenomenal growth. And again, about 10 years ago, the annual revenue for the agency was about $5 million. Today it's going to exceed $60 million. So we've had phenomenal growth in a very short period of time. And for a community-based behavioral health nonprofit, that kind of growth is really unprecedented. So what I want to talk about, because I think you have to try to convey to folks, you know, why we were able to grow as much as we were able to grow over a very short period of time. I think it has everything to do with our value system. So I'm going to share some of our values, which hopefully will provoke some questions at the end. So having the benefit of starting on Skid Row in basically December of 2008. At the time, that facility in the agency was abstinence-based. Like 98% of the county-funded treatment programs. And I don't want to offend people who are in long-term recovery or seeking recovery who have benefited from an abstinence-based approach. I'm one of them. I'm a 12-stepper. I, to this day, continue to actively engage in 12 steps. And I believe abstinence is the end goal, even for programs that take different approaches, right, to abstain from the dangerous behavior. But the abstinence-based approach that we've used in the substance use disorder world, the collective we, the American we, has been harsh. It's been punitive. It's been excluding, not inclusive of people. It's filled with judgment, and it's been poorly misaligned with the criminal justice system. We've essentially dealt with a public health crisis through the criminal justice system with horrific results. To underscore the problem, in 1980 in America, there were 600,000 people in jail, prison, or on probation or parole across all of America. 600,000 people in 1980. In 2020, that number was just shy of 6 million. We went on a 40-year spree of trying to arrest anybody who had a substance use problem and tangentially mental health problem or housing problem, right? We attempted to criminalize substance use, mental health, and homelessness with disastrous results. But specifically talking about the substance use situation, I can tell you that incarceration is trauma. It's not treatment. There are always going to be stories of people who leave in custody settings and don't use again, but they are the exceptions. They are the outliers. It is not a general rule. More often than not, people leave an incarcerated setting more traumatized and needing to use drugs or alcohol more than ever before, and other societal ills resulting from that incarceration, including continued inability to get jobs, housing, and other consequences. So I'm a harsh critic of how America has impacted the world in terms of dealing with people with substance use and co-occurring disorders. One of my favorite authors is Dr. Gabor Mate, who has written extensively on the subject. And when I once got to ask him a question at a seminar, how do we fix this broken system? And what he poignantly told me in response was, I take exception to the question. It assumes that it once worked. It's never worked in America. We've never known how to treat people with substance use disorders in America. We've approached it incorrectly. And again, that's not a slam on 12 steps. I'm a 12-stepper, and God knows it's benefited me, but far too many people have been excluded from a strict abstinence-based approach to people with substance use disorders. So I started on Skid Row, and in 2008, we were discharging people who couldn't abstain, who couldn't test negative from illicit drugs. And I remember, asking my boss at the time, when you discharge someone from a Skid Row program, where do they go? I mean, do you go full circle and end up in Malibu or Newport? Which of course was only exaggerating, the dilemma that we were the last house on the block, and why were we discharging these people? And so within this small agency at the time, just 2008, not that long ago, downtown LA CADA on Skid Row was allowed to find a better way to engage our participants. And so we didn't want to embrace the term harm reduction, although today I have no problem with that term. And it took us some time to find the right term, but today we like to hold ourselves out as a recovery-oriented treatment program, as opposed to a harm reduction program or an abstinence-based program. And I want to convey that one of the reasons for LA CADA's success is that we don't bring a program-centered approach to treatment. We look at the individual, and we do the best we can to meet the individual's needs. And for some people, that is an abstinence-based approach, and for others, it is simply to engage them through services, as imperfect as it may be, and as inconsistent as it may be, and everything in between. So we were radically different in 2008 than most all the others who were providing services not only on Skid Row but in LA County. And that difference allowed us, to experiment. We were able to finally break, free from this, this mindset that if you couldn't stay abstinent, we had to discharge you from the program. Instead, we continuously tried to find out ways to re-engage people, and it was successful. By all measures, it was successful. And at some point, although I don't know that they phrased it in this way, but at some point they asked me to go to our corporate office and essentially bring those kind of services that we had developed downtown to the agency, the broader agency. And I did kicking and screaming because I live in Atwater Village, and working downtown was nice. And I don't know if you've ever been to Santa Fe Springs, but the name is misleading. I don't know that there are any springs in Santa Fe, and if there are, I've never been there, and no one knows where they are. But what I will tell you is that for a community-based behavioral health nonprofit, it actually was a nice place to be operating from, because it's a commercial and industrial city, and we were the big nonprofit in an otherwise nonprofit desert, and we got a lot of attention and support from the city. At any rate, the journey went from downtown Los Angeles to the broader agency, and we brought this more compassionate approach to treatment. Now, I've already referenced Dr. Gabor Mate, who is one of my guiding lights, and the other would be Father Greg Boyle at Homeboy Industries. When I reference I'm a disbarred lawyer, and at some point, I'm in early recovery. I have a doctoral degree and multiple felonies. And I remember asking my lawyer, what would you do if you were me? And he said, without batting an eye, I'd go to Father Greg at Homeboy Industries and ask for a job. And had I had pearls, I would have clutched them. I thought, do you think I'm a gangster? And he laughed and he said, no. And I said, do you think I'm a convict? And he says, yes, you are. So, I went down there, and I have to tell you that was like a sentinel moment in my life, because really there's no other organization I've ever known where you walk in and everyone is happy to be there. And I'd been through multiple treatment programs in my own journey through recovery. I'd never experienced anything like that. Now, they're not a drug and alcohol treatment program, but they work with broken people, and they have created an environment there that is grace-filled and loving, and that really impressed me. The good folks at Homeboy directed me to Los Angeles City College to become a drug and alcohol counselor. I did. I figured I'll stay clean and sober, at least while I'm in school, and perhaps in my first couple of years working in the field. The experience at LA City College led me to LA CADA downtown, and the rest, has been a wonderful 16-year journey. And at some point, we were very intentional on trying to replicate, the ethos of Homeboy Industries at LA CADA. So a recovery-oriented approach that treats everyone as an individual, respects their differences and unique abilities and difficulties that may complicate or benefit them while they're trying to navigate the road from addiction into recovery, was one key factor. The other was a specialization with marginalized populations. We already had established that by engaging the unhoused on Skid Row. I found myself being a fierce advocate for the homeless or the unhoused, and then something really significant happened for me and the agency about 8 years ago. We were awarded a contract inside Men's Central Jail to engage gay and bisexual men and trans women for the first in-custody treatment or services offered to that population. They'd been segregated for a few decades, but they'd never been really offered any services inside, and we were the agency that they brought in to provide services. And we knew we were going to be judged on our recidivism rates, and we knew in order to move those recidivism rates, we had to be different and unique. And so the first thing we implemented was a program called a Ride Home, where we actually picked the participant up at 2 in the morning, because LA County Jail, in their infinite wisdom, likes to discharge people at 2 a.m. So we would pick them up at 2 a.m. And the way we got them to call us was we would take them to Denny's right across the street, and they would have their first good meal at Denny's, and then we would take them to a safe spot. And that Ride Home program was our first, like, out-of-the-box approach to trying to work with the people being released from LA County Jail. And then we knew we needed to deal with, specifically with the LGBTQ population, the fact that many were homeless and estranged from family, lacked, support systems. So we started the county's first sober living that was funded through the Department of Public Health, specifically for the LGBTQ population. That was a 20-bed house in Pasadena known as the Art House. Today, the Art House now is at a different property, but it's 32 beds. And then we have the Start House with another 20 beds, and we have the Heart House with another 9 beds, and all serving the LGBTQ population. And we get referrals from all over the county as people complete treatment programs in other parts of the county and come into LA CADA's continuum of care. We also have a transitional age youth program. Go figure, 18 to 25-year-olds probably don't do really well in treatment with 40-year-old guys sticking needles in their arm, right? And, we couldn't have figured that out on our own. It took us, way too long to understand that they needed to have their own treatment setting. And so we have a TAY program and TAY housing. We have a program for pregnant and postpartum women. We have a program actually for low-risk registered sex offenders in Long Beach. And if you have, and again, that can be very loaded, right? And some of them have engaged in crimes or offenses that will take your breath away. But at the end of the day, many of them are like in a gray area where really, they were caught urinating in a park, or they were caught having sex with someone on the down low who then turned it into a sexual assault charge. And I mean, some of these stories were horrific, and we decided we needed to provide housing for them. So we have 25 beds in Long Beach for low to medium risk sex offenders, and we engage them in treatment. We now have a partnership with the Los Angeles Mission, where we house 85 men and 20 women with the Los Angeles Mission, a great organization. These are for chronically homeless folks from Skid Row who have essentially been discharged from abstinence-based programs. And we house them at the LA Mission, and we bring them through our recovery-oriented program, where they're treated with a little more grace and respect, and they don't lose their beds just because their program is not what a manager or coordinator or counselor thinks it should be. We also move very smartly towards integrated health. At some point, I was having staff tell us this person's, not appropriate for this level of care, and I said, well, that's a problem. We're the highest level of care. If they're not appropriate for us, what does that mean? And they said, well, I don't know. It's just not safe for them or us to take them. And our response, and I got to give credit to my boss, who was, none of this would have happened without, leadership from the top down. Our response was, what do you need to be successful to engage this participant? And so now we have participants in our programs that most programs won't take. They have serious comorbidities or co-occurring disorders, but we have facilities that are staffed with medical doctors, psychiatric nurse practitioners, family nurse practitioners. We obviously have licensed and license eligible clinicians, along with counselors, a multidisciplinary team. We really got ahead of the integrated health movement, which is now the big thing, and the county's pushing everyone in. About 6-7 years ago, we started moving in that direction, and we are able to stabilize someone's mental health issues and kind of separate what is substance use and what is mental health, and we're able to deal with some of the comorbidities and house patients and engage them and retain them in treatment longer than other people. So whatever programs we have, they've all expanded. That in-jail program now is at Wayside in 3 of the dorms there. We're at Twin Towers working with the co-occurring. We have all the in-jail settings with the exception of the women's jail in Linwood, and that's up for a new contract in July, and we're going after it. I'm not sure it's a good thing that only one provider does all the services inside jail. We used to rail against that, but so far we've been found to be the provider of choice for L.A. County, working with the in custody people. And what I want to say is that being a former lawyer who was marginally successful for a short period of time as a criminal defense lawyer, I'm uniquely aware of the criminal justice system's impact on people with substance use problems. And we did not want to be a party to that. About 6-7 years ago, we launched, in collaboration with the city prosecutor in Long Beach, a program for Long Beach's. They identified 100 what they called frequent flyers. It's an unfortunate name, but these were high utilizers, homeless folks in Long Beach that were in and out of jail, in and out of emergency rooms, in and out of hospitals and institutions. And they didn't want to just continue to arrest, incarcerate, release. And so they got a bunch of providers in a room and said, who's willing to provide services without funding to this population? The room cleared out. We were the only ones there. We got the non-contract. And what they did was they placed us in a courtroom with a wonderful judge. And as these people would be arrested for whatever it was, possession, petty theft, vagrancy, a combination of mental health, substance use, and homelessness type offenses, they'd be brought to this courtroom, and the judge would say, I could send you to county jail like we have in the past, or you could meet with this team from L.A. CADA. They'll screen you, offer you an opportunity to get into a program that will lead to transitional supportive housing. We engaged about 60 of those 100 folks, and more than 40 of them stayed in treatment for longer than 6 months. It was a spectacularly successful program. And the city of Long Beach gave us an award for what we were able to do. And then all of a sudden we found judges in different courtrooms saying, we hear what you're doing in Long Beach. So today we are in about a half dozen courthouses working out of multiple courtrooms, but we have a couple of ground rules. We are the subject matter expert, L.A. CADA is. We understand that public safety is the judge's domain. But we want to have as much, if not more, respect than the prosecutor. All right? If the judge is going to sit there and only do what the prosecutor says, then we don't want to serve that courthouse. But if the judge will afford us the same voice as a prosecutor in that courthouse, then we will go in and advocate for the participant. We do not remand people because it's not, we don't take people back to jail and say they can't succeed in our program, because that would belie the notion that treatment's more effective than incarceration, and we don't believe that. So we've just had to roll up our sleeves and figure out a way to engage these folks. If they walk away, well, there's not a lot we can do, but even there, we rewrote the rules. When they walk away, we tell them to come back. We tell them they're welcome to come back. And what we have found is that 38% of the people who walk away will come back in 72 hours. And loaded, more often than not, but they come back. And, in today's environment, leaving people without access to services on the streets can be lethal. And so those who are from the recovery world understand that we've been in programs where when we relapsed, we were not only discharged, but we were told we couldn't come back. right? We were made examples for the benefit of those who were still in programs, which I don't understand and wouldn't tolerate in our agency. We are home. We want people to come back to us. I can tell you, we only have 2 rules that will result in automatic discharge: violence and getting other people loaded. We accept the fact that addiction, substance use disorder, is a disease centered in the brain, and that as part of the disease concept, relapse is common. And we're not going to punish participants who are exhibiting post-acute withdrawals or behavioral issues related to the struggles associated with early recovery and withdrawing from drugs and alcohol. We're just not going to do that. And it really resulted in an enormous amount of attention to the agency, both within the agency and outside. I will tell you, at one point, I came perilously close to losing my job, perhaps maybe even caused our executive director some sleepless nights, because our own workforce fought us on these changes. They did not buy into the fact that we were moving so intentionally towards being a smarter, less judgmental, more compassionate approach. And so over time, we were able to just basically say, hey, listen, all the other programs are doing what they have always done. Go work for them. And then we started actually getting people from those other programs saying, I see what you're doing at L.A. CADA. Can I be part of it? And so, we have, once we got past like a 2-year point, we kind of won. It was a tipping point. We kind of won the battle. And we, by and large, have a workforce that fully embraces this, this grace approach to working with alcoholics, addicts, people with co-occurring disorders, and other behavioral issues. So that's another part of our success. Integrated health, a grace-filled approach to working with people with substance use and co-occurring disorders, specializing with certain marginalized populations that are left on the periphery. So, today the agency is a vastly different agency than when I stepped in 2008. And not just because of me, but because people like me were allowed to reinvent ourselves and to find a better and different way to provide services. And, the county would probably never admit it, but you don't grow from 100 employees to 600 employees and from 5 million to 60 million without additional funding, and we've gotten it. And so someone is recognizing what we're doing and appreciating what we're doing, and that someone is our current leaders running Department of Public Health, Department of Health Services, and the Department of Mental Health. They understand that criminalizing a public health catastrophe is not the recipe going forward, and that a softer, kinder, more grace-filled approach, utilizing a multidisciplinary team, is the way to go, and that's really been our approach at L.A. CADA. So I just want to highlight a couple of things that are very unique to the agency, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. So I've told you about the sober livings or the recovery housing that we have here in the Pasadena-Altadena area, which is uniquely for the LGBTQ community, and we're pretty fiercely protective of that. We tell people there are roughly 1,200 of these beds in LA County funded by the Department of Public Health. LA CADA has 400 of them, and out of that 400, we have like 55 dedicated for the LGBTQ. So, respectfully, we don't take heterosexuals unless they can identify as truly being allies, and there are a couple that have come in, but, we tell them, hey, there are a bunch of other beds for you, These are reserved for a population that otherwise just doesn't get the support and nurturing that is necessary in other programs. That message resonated with a public defender who came to me and said, we can't get LGBTQ folks successfully engaged in diversion or drug court or these court-mandated programs Because there are no we're not sending them to providers that are culturally competent. And I agreed. And I said, but what are you going to do, right? What are you going to do? And she said, we're going to go in and change it. And so we went to this notorious judge who had been overseeing the drug court for 40 years at the criminal court building. And the public defender introduced him to me and said, we'd like to do a collaborative court for LGBTQ folks. And his response was something along the lines of, oh, they have no interest in recovery, and which was heartbreaking, right? And then he actually said, especially, the trans, right? They have no interest. It was stunning to hear a judge with that kind of authority, with those kind of prejudices, and yet that man said, sure, give it a try. And I am so grateful that he was at least willing and open to allow us. And so we started the country's first Rainbow Court, a collaborative court specifically for LGBTQ folks. And we've inspired other providers to want to be part of the Rainbow Court. So much so that there's another provider that gets more referrals than we do. And I'm not jealous. I'm happy. I'm glad that we have motivated other agencies to do the right thing. So that's a milestone. What we're doing inside the jails. So, we will, and inside the courtrooms, we will not allow a judge to arbitrarily mandate a certain length of time for treatment. What we will tell them is, like any other chronic disease, there is a course of recovery. And we're the subject matter experts, and we will tell you how long they need to be in treatment, what level of care, and we will report, with fidelity back to the court. And the courts that have utilized LA CADA services do so because we don't bring our participants back and say they're not willing or they're not ready. Right? There aren't beds in county jail or state prison for them anyways. And most of these judges are like, I don't know, how you guys do it, but you don't bring them back, and mostly they stay engaged, and so keep doing whatever you're doing. And so while other programs still get participants who are mandated to arbitrary times in treatment, which does not result in successful completion, it results in violations because obviously, no one wants to be treated longer than they need to be treated, or mandated to do something that even their own treatment team doesn't think is appropriate. We are able to work collaboratively with the courts and the courtrooms that we're in, and with even inside the jail. Inside the jails, we've brought a level of grace and non-judgmental approach to engaging the participants who are there that they never have seen before, and it's been embraced. So, with that in mind, because I realize I'm down to my last couple of minutes, I wanted to give you a sense of some of the unique things that we do at LA CADA, how proud I am to be able to work for the agency, how grateful I am for the people who have showed up from the agency here today, and to All Saints, because this has very much become part of our extended family. I've been coming for 34 years, and every time one of our guests or participants check out the church and they see the pride flag during the procession, or they are embraced by all of you, they go out of their way to tell me, I didn't know such a place existed. I didn't know that I could be welcomed and loved in a Christian church, which is heartbreaking that people don't know that. And so I am so grateful to All Saints that you have accepted us into your family. Not that we needed the invitation. You guys just have this, all are welcome, and we've come in, and many of these participants here today would consider themselves part of the All Saints family as well. So I've got a few minutes for questions if you have any, and again, thank you for allowing me to share about LA CADA. Yes.